morning, everyone. We're going to be starting our webinar in just 5 minutes. We're just waiting for a few more people to come through. Thank you for making us a part of your Saturday morning. My name is Neil Kanaya, and I'll be your presenter for this webinar. So we'll start at exactly 9 a.m. So please just stand by. us and making us a part of your Saturday morning. This webinar is still a part of Paku's Education Management Series, which is a series of webinars in partnership with Cocopia under their Aspire program. Today's session is entitled EdTech Coaching 101, How to Guide Teachers to Integrate Tech Meaningfully in the Pandemic. Very relevant and timely for what we've got today. A little bit of housekeeping before we continue. To all of those participants who are joining us through ClassIn, our online teaching platform, if you could just put yourselves on mute, and the way to do that is on the lower right-hand corner of your screens, you'll see a gear icon. So you just give that a quick press and just deactivate the microphone. That way we can all tune in and listen in to our speaker throughout the whole 2 hours. Thank you. All right, once again, my name is Neil Kanaya. It's my honor to be part of this webinar. Very, very excited to host you guys for today. We've got two special guests to officially welcome us to our webinar. I'll start by calling on the president of Cocopia and there you are.
There, I'm back.
Hi, Dr.
Okay, hello. Yes, okay, thank you. To our distinguished resource speakers from Empower Ed and ClassIn, to my boss, Alan Arellano, Executive Director of SEA, and my other boss, Joyce Samaniego, Executive Director of PACU, to my other colleagues from CEAP, Cocopea, PACU, and PEA, school administrators, the rest of the participants, a blessed and safe good morning to all of you. And I hope you all survived the the earthquake. Anyway, for those who didn't feel it, that's okay. I would like to warmly welcome all of you to another relevant seminar for our innovative, dedicated, and resilient educators all over the country. Likewise, my sincere thanks to all our partners for making this webinar possible. Today's topic, how to guide teachers integrate tech meaningfully in the pandemic, will be discussed by our resource speakers, Mr. Francis Jim Toscano, the founder of Empower Ed, and grade school EdTech coordinator of the Xavier School in San Juan, and also as well as by our longtime PACU stakeholder and partner, Yukon Lim from ClassIn, our country manager, the ClassIn country manager, and Yukon, thank you again for helping me out. In this context, this webinar aims to demonstrate the understanding of what EdTech coaching is and its importance in technology program of the school. Creating a simple plan on how to guide teachers in adopting technology in their classes, and list online technology tools to help EdTech coaches in guiding educators to be effective online learners and teachers. Before I end, I would like to congratulate the organizers who have collaborated for this webinar. I would also thank the participants for joining us, and I hope with the help of an EdTech coaching culture, our teachers will gain confidence and hone their skills in order to elevate teaching and amplify better learning. May God bless us all, and as usual, always stay safe.
Thanks for that, Dr. Tamayo. We'd like to also hear from the Executive Director of the Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, Mr. Jose Alan Arellano.
Mabuhay at magandang umaga sa lahat. Thank you, Joey. Thank you, Dr. Anthony Tamayo, our biggest boss in Cocopea, and Francis and Yuken, and Joyce, the members of the team. I would like to thank you all for being part of this event. EdTech Coaching 101, how to guide teachers to integrate tech meaningfully in the pandemic, with Sir Jim Toscano, a member of the CAP National Basic Education Commission, as trainee facilitator. The school year 2021-2022 is the second school year of the pandemic. Last year, we were mostly treading on unfamiliar territories in terms of delivery of instruction. This coming year, we are more certain that we have strengthened our programs and our skills. In the research conducted by CAP National Office recently, with more than 500 of our schools, basic education and higher educational institutions all over the country, it was revealed that 59.3% of the respondents are prepared to use a hybrid of online and distance learning using modules. 13.4% are prepared to use purely online and down the line based on their preparedness for the coming school year. The result shows that schools will be using online and distance learning using modules for as mode of instruction this coming school year. Now, with the Delta variant threatening our recovery, GCQ na naman tayo sa NCR, maulan at marami pang mga ibang mga threats, we may have to contend with the fact that face-to-face classes, which is the most effective way to learn before the pandemic, may no longer be possible for a long, long time. It is therefore incumbent upon us to look for the best tools of instruction and continue to upgrade our skills. Since last year, we have conducted numerous webinars and digital learning sessions, Cocopea, SEA, PAC, and all the other groups, including the National Basic Education Commission of our organization, training on flexible learning modalities, which culminated 2 weeks ago. Last week, we had a very interesting experience with the Class E. Our friend Yukan conducted a demonstration of this digital education application. As an educator for 30 years, I've been trying to look for an online tool that would best appropriate the classroom experience or merge it with digital technology. I have to compare it with the dozens I have tried so far, and I'm convinced that Class Aid is one of the best, if not the best, I've tried so far. So without further ado, let me wish you well. Thank you on behalf of the CAP, Cocopea, PEAC, and PACU, Class Aid, and all the others who are here, who are joining us. God bless you, and may we have a good one today. Maraming salamat po sa lahat.
Thank you, Mr. Arellano. I think we're ready to dive into the meat of our webinar. Just to remind everyone on the group, we've got around 90 people who are joining in through Class In, but we're also live through PACU's webpage on Facebook, and we've got around 220 viewers at this time. So to all of you who are tuning in through Facebook, through all of our different partners and channels, thank you. And I hope you are able to proactively participate in our webinar. You can leave comments, reactions, questions, which I think everyone will have throughout the webinar. We'll try to strategically address these as we go, but just know that there's a whole team of PACU behind this whole webinar, and we're watching all of your comments, and we're very excited and keen to answer any of your questions. So really excited about that part. So let's get right into our first speaker, who is part of the grade school of Xavier School in San Juan, and is the EdTech coordinator of that school. He is a sought-after keynote speaker who has led workshops across different countries, a digital specialist and trainer, and the founder of Empower Ed, and a podcaster. We'll learn more about his podcast maybe later. Please welcome Mr. Francis Jim Toscano.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hi, Joey or Neil. Neil, can you hear me well?
I hear you loud and clear. Yeah, take it away, Jim.
All right, thank you, Neil. Let me just start by sharing my slides. All right, good morning, everyone. So while I'm preparing my slides, yeah, so there. Um, so how do we start? We have a very interesting session today because um, I don't know if some people would feel frustrated or feel surprised. We will not be learning about technology today. It's very interesting right now because you when you can and I were thinking about this, and before I continue, let me just thank Sayap and Payak for really supporting this. We realized that there are a lot of webinar workshops on Facebook, on YouTube, or maybe in private virtual sessions. There are a lot of workshops um, for teachers about how to use this app, how to use this technology, how to use this software or whatever. But we seldom see the idea or the phrase EdTech coach. Um, and just to tell everyone, well, this will be a light session. You will not be learning. You will not be stressed out with following how to use this app or whatever. Instead, we will be talking about what do we do after we've learned all the necessary and even those nice to know apps that we have for the virtual, hybrid, online learning or environment, just like Alan mentioned a while ago. So yeah, you are in for a lot of ideas. And I just want to thank everyone for being here despite the strong rains that we have right now. So let me just start. Um, what has the pandemic taught us about online learning? So this is just a short situationer. And a lot of things are really about changes in the way we learn and changes in the way we teach as teachers. Sir Alan mentioned a while ago data on how the coming school year will be moving towards whether it's hybrid or still pure online. But what we're doing right now is we're not coming from zero experience. Last year we were coming from zero experience, right? I was working with a lot of schools and organizations, and a lot of schools that I've worked with really came from zero experience. It's very interesting that last year, those who did not want use technology in the classroom were now using technology or are now using technology. And very interesting, they're now also advocating the use of technology. If you see that change in understanding, it's basically caused by our own context, by the context that we have undergone last year and we continue to undergo this school year. So what have we learned about education? Well, a lot of things. Number one, technology tools allowed us to deliver learning when possible. Of course, very interesting because there are a lot of concerns here, especially with accessibility. Um, a lot. This is a very interesting insight, and um, I wanna celebrate our teachers. We did a lot of workshop on Empower Ed. I'm also part of SAYAP's National Basic Education Commission, and we do a lot of workshops basically on online learning. And some teachers would come in and say, "Oh, I'm undergoing this workshop webinar, but interestingly, we don't have technology access in the classroom." And the first question really on my mind was that, so how can we do technology without the infrastructure in your school? The question is not meant to trigger something, but the question is actually leading us to the basic idea that we can only use technology tools if the context, if the environment allows it. So what did we learn about technology tools? We cannot force it if the infrastructure does not really allow the use of technology tools. But when possible, technology tools can actually elevate and change the way we do learning. Second, I always love talking about this, but there is a rapid transition. There was a rapid transition that happened. If you converse with EdTech specialists or consultants, a lot of schools have undergone technology improvement and innovation in a span of years, not weeks or a few couple of months. What happened right now or last year specifically was in 3 4 weeks, we need to make sure that all teachers and even the students know how to use this app, know how to use this tool. And there was no time to experiment. In the ideal world, if you're introducing technology, there is actually a playtime where you let the teacher play, experiment, even the students. But we did not have that. And because of the rapid transition, everything else needed to be learned in a fast way. Um, Very interestingly, instruction and assessment practices were challenged, right? I'm pretty sure a lot of your questions right now, even with the assessment, is some of you might have not been settled with the idea that should I trust my student when they do test at the comforts of their homes? I still have that question when I speak to teachers and schools. It's always something that bothers them. But but if you but if you look at it, when you look at online distance learning, there is actually a big trust that is, that is given or that is expected to in our students. We trust them so that when they do assessment at home, they do it with integrity, with honesty, right? But that has been one question because of that, the assessment practices have been like questioned. Should we give more lower order thinking skill assessments, or should we focus on performance based assessment, which is harder for our students to quote and unquote cheat, not because we don't trust our students, but because we're so scared of how the online learning changed the way we do assessment, especially because we're not with them in the same room, right? Instruction. Neil mentioned about my podcast, and interestingly, I have a podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's called Empower Ed Podcast, and the latest episode was with Yukon. So Yukon was my guest, and our discussion or talk or conversation was about death by online lecture. So before, in the face-to-face classroom, you have death by PowerPoint, and teacher just feeding the PowerPoint slides or whatever. In online learning, you have what we call as the death by online lecture. And if you go to TikTok, you actually have students showing that they're doing something, pretending to be listening, because their teachers are not engaging them. Because their teachers or professors are actually just delivering lecture that they could have recorded, that they could have read somewhere else and in the content, right? So a lot of these things were changed. So we had to understand now what it means to deliver learning. How do we package them? I remember one of the most inspiring school leaders that I've worked with is Father Johnny Go, and in a workshop delivered in Ateneo, the Manila University, he likened the content into something like food. How do we deliver content so that it's interesting, it's palatable, that the students would actually eat them and enjoy them? So that kind of metaphor of content delivery online needs to be processed or needs to be prepared like a good food that you will enjoy. So every time now, teachers, this is my challenge. Every time you prepare your module, every time you prepare your online learning activities, think of your favorite food. It's raining right now. Maybe your favorite food is champurrado, or I don't know, ramen, if you're very interested. Now imagine the modules that you're preparing. Do they look like and taste like ramen? Or are they as boring as I don't know? Right? So that's how we are being challenged right now. And interestingly, social emotional learning matters more than ever. I think this is the best learning that we have. I think we have realized that academics can wait. Before we jump in with academic requirements, I think we need to understand that safety, The sense of belonging, even online sense of community, is out there. It's really being developed or focused on, and many more. We have many more learnings about the pandemic. If you read a lot of studies right now, recurring themes are out there. And what did we learn? It's very challenging to do distance learning. We tend to compare face-to-face learning with distance learning, but they're two different animals, right? It's like comparing apples and oranges. Both have advantages, both have disadvantages. But it's something that we need to learn to make sure that we deliver learning right now. That's just a situationer of what we have. But the big idea there is right now, and even before, a lot of people would say, Uy, teacher ka lang. They always say, Uy, teacher ka lang naman eh. Or if you line up the profession, you have an engineer, you have a doctor, you have a scientist, you have an astronaut, and then you have a teacher or accountant. Line them up. Do you think your students would point and say, I want to be a teacher? We often say that teaching is the most noble profession, but most of the time, the current state that we have, the policies that we have, most of the time, I tend to think that maybe those are just lip service statements that we give to our teachers. Why am I talking about that? Because right now, teaching is a very complex profession. Before, people would just say, "Oh, you're not good in math, then you just become a teacher." I always hear that back in the province. I'm a provinciano, and I just want to give a shout out to my friend, a school leader in Abra. It's raining in Abra right now, for 3-4 days, and they're watching us. To my friend Mark Louis Martes, but very interestingly, in the province, they always say if you're not good in math, be a teacher, or hindi ka naman magaling magmath, mag-teacher ka na lang, right? We often forget that teaching is a uniquely complex profession. Right now, we have so many hats. There's a meme coming out in on Facebook. A teacher is actually an interior designer. A teacher is actually part of the department health. A teacher is a nurse. A teacher is what else? Aside from teaching, a teacher does a lot of things. So many hats to wear. Then you bring in online learning, you add more hats to be worn by teachers. So before, if teaching is just, you go in front, teach, engage student, right? Interestingly, that's not teaching anymore. I even want to think that even before, becoming a teacher is actually a difficult task. My mother is a teacher, and I saw how she was challenged before, right? So the big idea, because teaching is a uniquely complex profession, teachers have so many things to do and to juggle. Um, and right now, we're dumping a lot of trainings to our teachers, right? Last year, I'm not quite sure. Can you comment on the chat right now, whether on your Facebook, on YouTube, or even in chat? How many certificates did you accumulate from all the webinar workshops that you have willingly or were first forced to attend? I feel like your end of the year report for your performance featured a lot of certificates. But to be honest, how many of those certificates or webinar workshops have really been something that you've used in your classes for the past school year? Professional development is good, but most of the time, but interestingly, we need to remind ourselves that we might just be dumping. It's called tech learning dump. I'm not quite sure if you've attended a lot of webinar workshops, but if you have attended a lot, maybe you find yourself in that state where it's like a lot of things have been dumped in your brain, and you actually were lost at the end of those webinars. Which of those will be applicable to you? The same thing with technology. It's okay. You can attend a lot of technology workshops. It's good. It's part of honing your skills. But in the end, which of those have actually helped you to sustain your practice? Which of those have been very helpful? Remember, the best professional developments are actually those that you apply in real life, in your school. So right now, how can schools further guide teachers in making technology and learning and teaching with technology better? That's a big question right now. After all the learnings that we have, how do we sustain it? And you know, we are inspired by this 2017 TED Talk by Dr. Atul Gawande, um, very famous in the line of medicine, and he shared that um, for the young surgeon before, he was a young surgeon and he get to improve to become one of the world class surgeon because as a more veteran surgeon actually helped them through what we call as coaching. From the world of sports, we take inspiration also. In sports, we always believe that you are never done and that everybody needs a coach. That when you become part of a team, you don't stay the same. You get to improve because you need to work with others. And I'm taking inspiration. I don't want to be hypocritical here. To be honest, um, I'm not quite. I'm not quite. Actually a very sporty person, but I love the idea of sports. A lot of us love the idea of sports. We can learn a lot from it. And I will take inspiration from coaching. So, what comes into your mind when you hear the word coach? So, we're taking inspiration from coaching from sports to make sure that we sustain innovations, not only edtech in the classroom, but even other education innovations in the classroom. So, I'm giving you 3 minutes to get your cell phone if you have a secondary device like a cell phone or a tablet, or if you're using your desktop, scan this and enter your thoughts. What comes into your mind when you hear the word coach? Okay. And then let's see. This is a Mentimeter activity. It's a word cloud activity. And let's gather thoughts from everyone. Some of you were able to jump into the class in platform, but a lot of our participants are actually coming in and joining us from the different platforms where we are being broadcasted live. So my big question or big interaction activity is, what comes into your mind when you hear the word coach? Right? So scan or go to menti.com and use the code 8739407. So 2 minutes. Right, let me just share my screen. Let's try to share. So you can also know or see what's happening. Desktop sharing. All right. Let me see. Can you see what is being shared? If I've if I successfully have shared my screen, you would see the word cloud moving, right? So a mentor, when you hear the word coach, the bigger the word is, that means more people have answered it. So mentor, guide, leader, trainer, facilitator, a lead, teach, a leader, support. All right. So keep those ideas coming in, and a lot of this, a lot of these words are actually correct. I can remember the time when I was new to my school, and I did have a lot of teachers guiding me on what to do, and I considered them as mentors. But I quite not I'm not sure if I did call them as a coach, because in our education setup right now, I'm not quite sure if you've heard an edtech coach or maybe an instructional coach. A lot of schools would have mentors, right? And that mentor-mentee relationship or partnership is actually based on expertise, right? Or maybe most of the time, the mentorship program is to partner a more veteran teacher to a newbie teacher. Usually, that's the big idea of mentorship. But then after 1 or 2 years, 3 years, no more mentorship idea, right? Usually, mentorship is given as something that a program that is given to new teachers or maybe teachers who needs more help in the classroom. So mentor, mentoring guide, teacher, trainer, leader, teach, facilitator. So thank you for your answers. Um, I love all your thoughts. I love what you have shared. And I just want to pick up from a lot of your from the keywords that you have. Coaching is when you combine facilitating, mentoring, guiding, training, and all of those things. When we speak of coaching, we don't only speak of training. A trainer is not the same with a coach because most of the time, a training is just one time thing. A trainer gives the input, you try it on your own, then you apply it in whatever things where you can apply training. Sometimes most trainings are a one-time deal, right? Whether the trainer is from outside of your school or from inside your school. Um, we have what we call as instructional technology coaches. In the bigger scheme of things, we have instructional coaches. When we talk about EdTech coaching here, it's actually coaching teachers. There's also coaching for students. But right now, just to be clear, we're actually focusing on coaching teachers to make use of technology better. There is what we call as an instructional coach also. There's no pressure for the instructional coach to work with technology, to introduce technology, but for instructional technology coach, you will later find out that there is a big role, there is a big expectation to integrate and infuse technology use to improve learning and teaching. So again, the big idea of instructional technology coaching is to help teachers integrate technology tools and even strategies, pedagogical approaches, strategies to improve two-tier. Number one, to improve teaching, improve teachers' instructional practices. But then in the end, like any PD, the end goal is not to make the best teacher, right? The end goal is for that teacher to be able to help the students improve and outcomes, improve their learning. So remember that PD is not the goal of the PD is not for the teacher to collect a lot of certificates for the use of promotion, okay, or whatever things that you like to use those certificates. When you undergo PD or professional development or professional learning, the end goal is to actually improve student learning or outcomes. It's the same with coaching. Because if you want to coach a teacher with the use of technology, or if you use technology in your own, you should gauge it's not how well you use Mentimeter, how good you have used Mentimeter, or how well you designed using whatever platform. It's how well the students engage with you. For example, in the Mentimeter, I did a Mentimeter, but no one answered. Does that mean that I'm a good teacher already in terms of using technology? Not necessarily. Those gaps between technology use, between teaching practices, that's where EdTech coaches come in. Technology coaching or instructional coaching expect the EdTech coaches to help educators leverage technology and integrate them with the curriculum, with the pedagogical practices. You might be asking right now, what's the deal with this? I'm a teacher. Why am I listening about technology coaching? You will find out later on that we need to establish a culture of coaching, that you don't need a title, the title coach, to coach someone. That's the big setup right now. If we want to sustain practice, we need to make sure that we coach each other. That's my concern with with mentoring, for example. Mentoring most of the time is just one-off deal, and it's very personal, right? Coaching is a more universal thing. I love mentoring teachers. I love to do that. But when we focus on instructional technology coaching, that coach or even a teacher focuses on leveraging technology and curriculum together. So if you, I don't know if you know TPAC. TPAC is technology, pedagogical, content knowledge. It's the same thing also. For an edtech coach, an edtech coach is someone who could leverage all those three things so that a good learning design comes out. Um, if you want to be an edtech coach, there are standards. Google, for example, has a free professional development on how to become an edtech coach. EASTI, EASTI has standards for coaching. So for EASTI, an edtech coach is a change agent. This is why not all edtech trainers are actually coaches. Not all edtech speakers could actually become coaches or actually coaches. Because to become an edtech coach, you need to be a change agent. You need to be grounded with the reality of your school. You need to be a connected learner. So you are a change agent, you are a connected learner, you continue to learn. You collaborate with the teacher. You are a learning designer. Very interestingly, one of the marks of being an edtech coach that is different from being a trainer or maybe a speaker that you see online is that the coach actually does the things that he or she coaches. I don't know if you've felt frustrated, but sometimes when you listen to speakers on online or maybe a speaker, and then you ask, how can I apply this on my own? And most of the time, or unfortunately, they don't have an idea. That's the disadvantage, right? But if you have a coach in your school, if you want to become a coach, you need to make sure that you walk your talk. So you know how to design learning. You know how to facilitate workshops, right? And you know how to use data. You engage the teacher to collect data. Like, for example, hi, teacher, I want to go to your classroom. Let's collaborate and see how we can improve recitation or literacy or numeracy. And of course, you are a digital citizen advocate. I don't want to go further on this standards, but you may look at the website of EASTI. They also have standards for educators in terms of technology, use, and even school leaders or administrators. These are very good standards because it will guide you what to target if you want to do well with technology. Um, what we want to point out is that edtech coaches are needed more than ever. And that's one thing that the pandemic has taught us. The challenge of sustaining technology innovation. For example, our school already has learned about this platform, but how do we ensure that teachers are actually using them properly, especially now at this time of distance learning? You need edtech coaches to guide teachers. Edtech coaching is journeying with the teachers. It's not a one-off deal. You need to sustain the practice of integrating technology through having edtech coaches who will guide teachers in lesson planning, who will help them, observe them, go into their virtual classes, and be able to point out where to improve on. That's how we get to sustain technology innovation in the classroom. So right now, I want to take inspiration on a TV show that I love. It's the Ted Lasso. It's a series on Apple TV. It's about football. An American coach who is now coaching a British, a British football team. And if you are interested in this, you can watch it on your own. But I love it because the main character is the coach, Ted Lasso, and then you have an ensemble of cast, football players. And very interestingly, when I watch Ted Lasso, I've picked up some things. If you want to do edtech coaching in your school, if you're a teacher and you want to coach someone, if you want to prepare yourself to and become an edtech coach, or if you're a school leader, an administrator, and you want to set up an edtech coaching program in your school, these are the things that we can learn from Ted Lasso that will be very inspiring for our teachers to do. Number one, when we work with teachers on technology, we need to build relationship and earn the teacher's trust. The coaching session or any session that you have for the teacher in terms of professional development should make the teacher feel safe, honest, and open, especially for veteran teachers who are not very used to using technology. Last year, a lot of teachers actually felt frustrated because they were having a hard time. They were having a hard time with the use of technology in the classroom. And they are scared to venture out because they always think that every mistake that they commit with the use of technology or whatever will be taken against them. And most of the time, some teachers admit will not admit that they need help because there's no trust, right? And they always see, for example, their administrators as someone having a checklist and then bringing that out, the checklist during the performance appraisal, and giving back the mistakes or letting them realize the mistakes that they have. EdTech coaching is sitting down with the teacher and making it the teacher feel safe, honest, and open in terms of understanding him or herself and how to improve the way he or she makes use of technology. So number one thing that I've learned from Ted Lasso is build relationship and earn the teacher's trust. If you're an administrator, you're a teacher also, you want to be an EdTech coach, you have to sit down with the teacher, you have to build relationship, which is very different with how we do professional development right now. Usually, it's one-off and it's very non-personal, right? But again, if we want have to EdTech coaches in the school to sustain the program, we need to build relationship. And EdTech coaching becomes easier, and teachers admit what they need to improve on when they trust the person helping and guiding them. And they know that the person is not out there to catch them, but to actually help them and be better. Right. Second one, if you want to sustain technology in your school as an EdTech coach or school leader, be curious, not judgmental. Being curious is about asking questions about the teacher, about the way he or she does her lessons or implement or the science learning experiences. And when you ask questions, listen to the teacher. Their struggles in technology tools, their concerns, their doubts. And when you ask questions, you listen, you practice empathy. A good EdTech coach does not impose ideas. If you're an EdTech trainer, you're sort of getting the buy-in of the teacher to use this platform. It's like there's a pleasure, not a pleasure, but a pressure for you to sell the platform to the teacher. But if you're an EdTech coach, you don't impose. Instead, you step into the experience of the teacher so that you better understand. So practice empathy and consider the context of the teacher. When you do EdTech coaching, it's not one size fits all. Most of the time, trainers or EdTech trainers or whatever, that's the difference because they give a general training and it depends on you on how you contextualize it. For coaching, it's always contextualized, whether it's a big coaching group or a peer or a small group. Always listen, consider the context also. So be curious, not judgmental, all right? And number three, this is what I love, smells like potential. In Ted Lasso, when they were in their locker room, he always says that he mentioned about smelling the potential in each and every one. So when you're coaching a teacher, never underestimate a teacher. A teacher might have apprehension, but it doesn't mean that the teacher does not know anything about technology, especially right now. Especially now that we have learned a lot, we have training dump in our mind. Work and build on the strengths of the teacher. Always aim, always look at the potential of every teacher. Interestingly, just to share to you, when I first used technology, I didn't actually have the only device that I have was a netbook. a cheap one, a small one, and I did not imagine myself falling in love with education technology if I have to go back to that memory. And I did have coaches in my school when we were first experimenting it, and they saw the potential in me with that. I'm a CLE teacher. I was a CLE. I'm a religion education and values education teacher before. So it was a shock for some that I was using technology in a traditional, very traditional subject. But that's how I got to improve the way I teach. So never underestimate the teacher, work and build on their strengths. Look at the potential. Don't go there and say, hey, this is the problem, here's my solution. You don't do that. An EdTech coach always listens and looks at the potential of every teacher. Number 4, my favorite, be a goldfish. Um, when you're coaching teachers, it's nice to have the goldfish mindset. I don't know if this has been busted or if it's a myth that has been busted. Um, a goldfish has a very short memory or memory span. So what I've learned from Ted Lasso is you can be a goldfish, you can learn from your mistakes, and then forget about them, and then you just keep on swimming. I love this because in real life, teachers will commit a lot of mistakes in the classroom, especially with technology. I remember working with a teacher, and we were using the iPad in the classroom. The students have their own iPad, and then the internet suddenly went down. It's a good thing that the teacher has plan B. Very good for the teacher. We did plan for technology, but because of the internet shutting down, we had plan B. And then, of course, we talk about it. We learn from the mistake. And then we forget about it. We learn, we forget about the bad experience, and we pick up what has been taught to us by that experience. So very interestingly, we can translate this with the big idea of, having a growth mindset. That's how we term it right now. But I love to call it like, the goldfish mindset. Learn from your mistake, forget about it, and just keep on swimming or doing the things that you will have to do. So don't forget to be an EdTech coach, have that kind of mindset also. Be a goldfish. And it's worth sharing that mindset to teachers. Number 5, when you work with teachers or when you're a teacher and you want to use technology or you're a school leader, you want to improve on technology use in the classroom because or through certain key people, it's good to set a goal. And the goal is not about winning or being perfect. It's not about hitting the best, or no. It's not about being perfect in the classroom all the time. We need to accept no one is perfect. No learning experience is perfect. There will be mistakes. There will be challenges. But when it comes to technology integration, the goal is not to be perfect all the time. The goal is to actually be the best version of yourself as a teacher that integrates technology. That's one thing that we should tell our teachers and tell even our students, that in the end, the goal is not just to win. The goal is actually to undergo the process, to take the journey so that you can develop the best version of yourself. There will never be a perfect version. There will never be a perfect version of yourself, but there will be the best version. You can have that best version for yourself. Number 6, find reasons to celebrate. When you're coaching teachers, nothing's too small for celebration. Even mistakes are worth celebrating. Again, growth mindset taking effect here. Celebrate everything. When you want to inspire teachers to continue working with technology, I've encountered teachers. Sometimes it's not the fault, but sometimes we give a misconception that technology is the answer to everything. Let's forget about that. Technology will not answer all the problems that we have in the classroom. or in education. Let's not hype that mindset. Most of the time, if we hype that mindset that technology is the silver bullet, teachers, when they use technology, gets frustrated, especially when things do not work out well. Okay. Again, veering away from the idea of perfection, of finding that perfect solution. It will, most of the time, mistakes will come out. And yet, what we want to do when we want to inspire and guide teachers to use technology and to sustain the practice in the classroom, we need to make sure that we celebrate every journey, a part of the journey with them. Nothing's too small. If the teacher learned how to share in an online video class, learn how to share her screen for the first time, celebrate it. Or if there were mistakes committed, celebrate those mistakes because they are worth, because they can help you become better. You can learn from them, right? So find reasons to celebrate when you're doing technology integration in the classroom. 7, empowerment builds confidence. EdTech coaches should always remember to respect the autonomy or agency of the teacher. Interestingly, let's not forget that when we work with teachers, we don't impose our own ideas. It's always, here are the options. Let's deepen. Let's go into the problem. Let's understand it, and let's look at the options. In the end, you have to let the teacher make decisions, because when the teacher make the decisions after laying down all the cards on the table, you're giving the teacher a higher level of agency, and higher level of ownership. So that when it's successful, even if it's not successful, there's an ownership to it. And the teacher is ready to face the consequences, or to face or to learn from every mistake that has been committed. Empowerment through respect of autonomy or agency builds confidence. That is very, very important. Some administrators, some coaches, or I don't know, some trainers often would say, here's the solution, just do it. No, when we're doing that, remember in the classroom, we don't even do that for the students because we want to build agency in our students. It's the same thing for EdTech coaching. You lay down all the options after reflecting with the teacher, and then in the end, you let the teacher make the decision. But when the teacher makes the decision, make sure that you're there to support, that you're there to be the mirror. An EdTech coach is also a mirror. Okay, you mirror, you act like a mirror so that the teacher could actually see what he has done or she has done and what needs to be improved on. Number 8, great ideas come from anywhere. I've learned that from the TV series. Encourage teachers to find the best solutions by themselves. So like what I've said a while ago, you let the teacher find solutions from them or even through their colleagues, through collaboration and teamwork. Very interestingly, that most of the time we always think of EdTech coaching is not just a one-to-one coaching. It could be also a collaborative, professional learning circle coaching. EdTech coaching is not simply giving solutions. And we need to inspire and remind the teachers that we don't want spoon feeding. I've encountered when I work with schools, there are teachers who would say, Sir Jim or Jim, sir, bigay mo na lang yung solution. Bigay mo na lang kung anong gagawin namin. Oh, I would love to do that. It makes things easier for me. But that's not the way we want to sustain technology program. Some teachers are prone to just being spoon-fed with the solutions. But if you want to make your technology program innovative and successful, teachers need to stand up on their own also. That they need to look for solutions for themselves. We don't want to let the teachers feel that they're helpless and so therefore we just provide them with solutions. No, that's part of being a teacher, all right? So please, if you want to be an EdTech coach, don't provide all the necessary answers, okay? Because in the end, you have to respect the context of every teacher also. I think this is the last, or maybe second to the last, model and demonstrate. As an EdTech coach, you walk the talk. You walk the talk, and you need to be able to show what needs to be done. This builds up your credibility. This builds up your credibility to become a guide. I know for a fact that some teachers are turned off when they see someone telling them that needs to be done or the things that needs to be done, but they don't actually model and do themselves or do those things by themselves. Do you agree with me? Sometimes it's a turn off. For example, someone told you to improve, or maybe someone told you to stop using this platform because it's not good. And then you see that person using the platform in the same way, like how you did it. Or maybe just simply saying, or you need to be quiet in the classroom. But then that person who told you to be quiet is actually the one talking and talking. The context of the student. That's what we mean by modeling and demonstrating. If we want to sustain technology program, we need to all become models of tech integration. Um, we need to see. Teachers want to see. Teachers needs to see how things are being done. Co-teaching is very good in edtech coaching. I've done that as a department chair. I've worked with a lot of teachers, and one thing that I've realized is it's very important to do co-teaching or team teaching. I had a new teacher in grade one, and in grade one we used the iPads to do differentiated learning in CLE. There are stations, so we're doing station rotations. It's the teacher's first time to do that because she comes from a school where technology is not leveraged much. So I had to demonstrate that. So I taught a class. So I followed what one edtech coaching model, which means which says I do it, then we do it, and then you do it. So sorts of modeling style. So I taught that class. So as a department chair, I did not shy off because I was asking her to use technology in the classroom. So as a department chair and her coach, I have to do that. So I taught in grade one, in one of her classes, and then in her next class, we co-taught. We taught together. She handled this part of the lesson. I handled this part of the lesson. I was there in her class, and then on the succeeding classes, I was merely observing. I was just there sitting, taking down notes, and looking at how we can improve on. That's one way of doing edtech coaching. Don't shy away from demonstrating that in the class, and that's how you also gauge, without blowing my own whistle, or to, with modesty aside. How do you gauge a good edtech coach? If you're a teacher, invite the edtech coach to demonstrate it in your class. That's how you gauge a very good edtech coach also, right? They don't just talk, 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 talk. They actually know how to apply it in the classroom. Okay, so those are the learnings that I have from Ted Lasso, a very interesting TV series. You can, if you want to watch it, it's on Apple TV Plus. You can watch it also in different platforms, and it's very interesting. My favorite really is the goldfish mindset. The goldfish mindset. Um, Learn from your mistake, forget, and actually swim. Just keep on swimming. So if we want, those are the tips that I have. If you want to be an edtech coach, and take note, it's not about knowing all technology tools. It's just really deepening the quality of relationship, the quality of connection, and even the quality of teaching with the teacher. Now, some of you are curious. So, Sir Jim or Jim, are those the only things that we need to learn about edtech coaching? There are a lot of things to be learned about edtech coaching. So I have some personal pro tips for edtech coaching out there. Number one is in sorry, in all the things that I have in all the things that I have shared, very important that you grow with the teacher. One of my favorite EdTech coaching model is grow. What does grow mean? When you talk to a teacher, when you discuss how to do improve teaching, grow, there's a grow model diagram for coaching. G means you set a goal with the teacher, what they want to achieve. And then R, you take a look into the reality, what's happening. That's called context. You understand the context of every teacher. You ask, you listen. That's where you come in and listen and take empathy. And then you look at options. You don't provide the options. Of course, you help in looking into the options, but it's very helpful that you also let the teachers look at the different options. And then W is will. Which choices? You have to empower the teacher to make the choice for themselves. So for example, if this is how we introduce technology. You don't introduce technology by saying, hey, I was in a workshop and I found this technology or this app. It's sikat, it's famous, let's use it. No. The mindset that you have is to always start with, hi teacher, how's your lessons? How are your learning experiences? Are there problems that you want to look into? And maybe let's see how maybe technology could come in. When you talk to the teacher, you don't step in the classroom or maybe do coaching and say, this is the app that I want you to use. No, you don't do that. You always start with the problem, with the context of the teacher. And then you present options for the teacher. Okay? So very simple, grow. It's very simple, right? You grow with the teacher. Growth mindset. Ayan, goldfish mindset. I always love those words. The second one is coaching is not just one-to-one, like mentoring or peer-to-peer coaching. It could be also PLC, professional learning coaching. In my school, for example, we have EdTech coaches. Just to share to you, very interestingly, I think I was one of those who have used the term EdTech coach in the country because when I did a keynote, I presented myself as an EdTech coach or a coach. They thought that I have a varsity team that I'm coaching. The big idea of coaching is that you can also expand the idea of coaching. In my school right now, we sort of have at least 3 to 5 EdTech coaches per grade level or per subject or per department. And those EdTech coaches were trained. You don't become an EdTech coaches immediately. Of course, you have to undergo professional training also, or maybe self-paced learning. But when we did coaching, we had to make sure that there are different ways through which the teachers could be in touch with the teacher. It could be a personal, individual coaching. It could be a PLC, professional learning community, like an EdTech coach in grade 3 working with the grade 3 teachers. We also do observation and non-evaluative feedback. I think this is very, very important. When you do EdTech coaching, you need to make sure that the EdTech coaching sessions are sacred, safe spaces for them to commit mistakes. EdTech coaching or coaching in itself will fail if you say that, all the data that I will get from you or from our coaching, I'll send it to your department chair so that they can include that in your performance appraisal. That's very, very difficult. That's not good because the teacher will then feel afraid, diba, to commit mistakes. So it's very good to have coaches who enters the classroom with the permission and, of course, in collaboration with the teacher to just simply observe and do evaluative feedback. You don't evaluate and then send this report to the boss. Of course, maybe you can say, hi, for example, hi, Department Chair Neil, your teacher Sheng has approached me for coaching and we've been doing some coaching and she's been really improving. So you can do something like that, but for me it's sort of a betrayal, to do coaching and then give that report highlighting maybe the negative aspects of the teacher. Your coaching culture won't grow. Instead, you will have a culture of fear. Again, we don't want that, right? We don't want that. Okay. Another pro tip. This is actually a basic tip. Always 21st century pedagogy before technology. We always talk about technology always in webinar workshops, but the underlying principle is 21st century pedagogy first. Your curriculum should be 21st before you can even infuse technology, or else they'll just be infusing technology and just go to the memorization part of learning. You know, the old traditional ones. There's a study by OECD, a seminal study, quote and unquote, most quoted study, because the study showed that technology has no impact in learning. You know why? One of the reasons, because technology was used to support traditional teaching. Of course, no impact there because nothing new happened. No change. It's just like using the laptop to memorize something, right? So, or your technology tool, your iPad, to just do memorization. So again, focus on 21st century pedagogical approaches. Student-centered, student-driven. Let the students make use of technology to create something. Diba? A lot of people right now are jumping on social media to become quote and unquote content creators. You know, that could be a way also in the classroom. Diba, we want the students to be creators themselves. So let's make use of technology and make them creators. So always 21st century pedagogy before technology. Hence, the challenge for EdTech coaches is number one, you should know 21st century pedagogical approaches. To be an EdTech coach is not really just knowing all the apps, not just being trained with all technology. That's why the next question is, do I need to know all tech tools? I don't know if you've seen, but I don't know if you're part of this group of teachers, but hands down to teachers who have collected different badges. Certified this, certified that, certified this, certified that. It's okay. You can learn all the technology, but then in the end, this is my pro tip. Do I need to know all technology tools? Not necessarily. You know why? Because in the end, the most important thing is, as an EdTech coach, you have your toolkit, which includes your core apps. What are core apps? These are apps that have been tried and tested. These are age appropriate. They make workflow of learning efficient. They actually help the student to think and create. You have to create your own core applications, because when you speak to teachers, most teachers will ask you, so coach, what's the best app? And most of the time you will have to suggest. There's no pressure to learn a lot. Right now you see a lot of edtech apps. Agree or disagree? I'm pretty sure we'll tend to agree that your school have sent you to a lot of technology program or PD training just to learn an application. But then in the end, you go back and say, how is this even appropriate with us? Right? My pro tip as an EdTech coach is that you create your core application. You try and test them in your own, or on your own, or in your own classroom. Check, take if they are aligned to 21st century pedagogical approaches also. Then in the end, keep this toolkit with you so that when you speak to teachers, then you're very good, and then you will have good options for the teacher. But then in the end, you don't impose. You have to make sure that you empower the teachers to make decisions. As compared to an EdTech trainer, especially if that EdTech trainer is also representing something. An EdTech trainer will push and push and push something most of the time, based on my experience. But if you're an EdTech coach, you have a sort of space for agency, space for decisions, because you present the menu and you empower the teacher to make decisions. Final thoughts. Do I need to have the coach title to be a coach? No. That's my first point. Very interestingly, if you look at it, social media nga just Just have your YouTube channel. Then you can brand yourself as a content creator, whether your content is actually appreciated or not. You know, right now, if you've noticed right now, everyone's going on Facebook, running their own webinar workshop. That's okay. That's very good, right? Just do realize that in the end, you don't need to have the coach title to be a coach, right? You don't need a leadership position to coach someone, but you need to make sure that you have what it takes to be a coach, because your credibility will go with it. You cannot just go there and coach someone, and then if nagkamali yung teacher, sasabihin mo sa teacher, you'll tell the teacher, oh, it's your fault. You don't do that, because coaching is a journey, right? You don't leave the teacher. You don't coach just for the sake of, being able to do so, or just, just doing it. You have to have what it takes to be a coach. And that does not happen overnight, by the way. So don't worry. Don't pressure yourself. Again, you can learn everything about what it means to coach. But number one, if you don't experience it, if you don't have the expertise of the experience in the classroom, that will make it difficult also. Right? So most of the time, I've realized that personally, I love EdTech coaches who have experience in the classroom, who also have experience in struggle with technology, because I know that they also know what I'm experiencing. So there, what I want to say is experience things for yourself. Okay. Second, schools should have EdTech coaches to help sustain technology programs, because your EdTech coaches, they're like the people who journeys with teachers, who will help sustain technology programs. Because if you don't have EdTech coaches, just keep on training, and then of course you have your department chairs or administrators. And most teachers sometimes do not see their teacher admins as safe spaces, because in the end they will have to evaluate them. You should have EdTech coaches who will balance that out, right? So sustainable technology programs, you have those because you have coaches working. And mind you, it's not EdTech coaching only that we want to have. We want instructional coaches. You know that you can also have coaching for school leaders. When fellow administrators coach their fellow administrators, that is also possible. So you can also broaden the idea of coaching in your school, not just EdTech coaching. And then in the end, a culture of coaching transforms a school community. A culture of coaching, a culture of change, a culture of changing one's mindsets, beliefs, and actions actually transforms a school community. Because in the end, the sustainability of a technology program will not anymore depend on just the principal, or will not just anymore depend on one or two expert teachers. Because you have a culture of coaching, a culture of helping each other be better in the classroom, then that culture transcends the people in it. So that even if, for example, sorry, Sheng, I will have to use you again because you're the only one whose camera is on. Because in the end, if Sheng comes in as a new teacher, Sheng will feel the culture of coaching in the non-tangible aspects of the school community. You know, the vibe, you can feel the vibe. You can feel it in the community. That's what I mean with culture of coaching. So that even if the EdTech coaches leave the school, go to a greener pasture, or maybe retires or resign, the coaching itself does not end there. It is actually now part of the school culture, right? So I think that's the end of the discussion that I have. But I want to end. I want to go back. This is a screenshot of the Ted Lasso series that I'm watching. Coincidentally, the second series just started last night. So I am so inspired right now to talk about this. I love that show. Coach Ted Lasso, the only thing one of the most important thing I love about this show is that Ted Lasso's idea of that he believes in belief. There's this idea of hoping, right? Of believing in something. but it's also important that you believe in believing. You don't just believe in something, you actually believe in believe. I think that's the big idea of coaching right now. Teachers will have to will encounter mistakes, will encounter problems. EdTech coaching gives that necessary space for that. Growth mindset, we always say that, we always promote that in students. But growth mindset should also be promoted among or for teachers, right? So therefore, one of the best ideas of EdTech coaching that I've learned from Coach Ted Lasso. By the way, he's a fictional character. He's not a real life friend. But I love his character because he reminds us to believe in believing. That we need to believe in our teachers for them to grow, for them to be better. And with that, I end my sharing on EdTech coaching. See, I told you, we will not talk about technology themselves, but the big idea of coaching itself are very important to consider. And with that, I end. Thank you, everyone. That is EdTech coaching, guiding teachers to integrate tech meaningfully, even beyond the pandemic.
All right, thanks, Jim. That was a really meaty presentation, but you're not going anywhere. We're going to keep you a little bit longer. So everyone else I think we've got a total of 1,400 viewers, not just from Class In, but across all of the pages where we are live streaming. So very happy to have all of you. We'd love for you to chime in with your comments, reactions, and questions. So far, we've only got 2, so I'm going to buy you guys some time. I've got a couple of questions for Jim myself. But before I go to my questions, one of our commenters here, I think this is Maria Socorro, but spelled backwards. Her question is, what is the job description, if there was one, of an EdTech coach? Who are they? Can they be IT people, computer programmers, or teachers who know about apps and tech? What's your 2-sentence job description of an EdTech coach? We don't have your audio there. Thanks.
I was asked that question before because I was, when I became, I think the first, maybe I'm not quite sure, the first formal EdTech coach in my school, they actually gave me that space to define my job. So I tend to look. I know a lot of EdTech coaches, especially with my community, the Apple Distinguished Educators, and one of the basic things, definition of EdTech coaching is basically someone who guides the teachers to leverage the pedagogy, the curriculum, improve everything through the use of technology. So if you've noticed, I've shown EST a while ago. The EST standards actually can define what a technology coach is, but a technology coach is not only a trainer. It's not only someone who knows the apps. A technology or EdTech coach actually also knows what's happening in the classroom. Because most of the time, some schools would designate their IT head to be a coach, for example. But that IT head did not have, if the IT head does not have any experience of teaching in the classroom, things can get lost in the translation, right? For example, Neil is an Neil, you're an IT head. You will speak the language of IT. Sheng, the teacher who wants coaching, might not be able to understand your language because Neil, you don't have an experience or you don't speak the language of what it takes to teach in their grade 1, grade 2 students. It's not that we are very picky about it because there are IT heads that also have experience in the classroom. So what we want to happen is that an EdTech coach is someone who is in that intersection. It's in that nexus of being a teacher, a learning designer, someone who could actually lead a training or a workshop, someone who could sit down and really sit down and journey with the teacher. So even for me, I would say, okay, basic knowledge of application. You don't have to know all the apps like what I've said. But if Neil, I would ask you, Neil, do you have a tried and tested app for virtual conferencing? Do you know a tried and tested app for that is a learning management system? Do you have a tried and tested app for office online collaboration? Do you have a tried and tested app for for creating videos? So sort of like that. If you have those apps and I call them core apps because they've been tried and tested. You're good with me. I will not ask you to say, for example, Neil, do you know 50 apps that we could use? Because in the end, EdTech coaches really realize that in the end, teachers settle for those apps that have been tried and tested. They don't go out there venturing, oh, I love this app, it's new. Because they know that if you present or use something new, it takes time for the teacher to learn about it, even the students. Remember the students always. It's not just the teacher who will study how to use that application. Even students themselves will have to learn how to use them. You don't just assume that Sheng comes in and says, this is a video app that we will be using. Oh, you just learn it by your own. You can't do that to students. So someone really who's in the intersection. That's how I would define. It's a very long definition actually. But yeah, ISTE standards for EdTech coaches should be helpful. Oh, by the way, sorry Neil, I just add. Most EdTech coaches that I've worked with that I know are actually first classroom teachers, subject teachers. Because in the end, because you can learn apps. You can learn apps, but the experience that you have in the classroom is something that is worth sharing, and it's something that you and the teacher you're coaching, that you are coaching, it's something that you share together. It's you speak the same language, quote and unquote. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's a great answer. Hopefully that helps Maria Socorro. I think there's a question, another question that dovetails to that, which is, should an EdTech coach be an IT expert? And I think you've answered that already, saying that it doesn't have to be. It's somebody who needs to be both fluent in tech, but at the same time understand the subject matter and basically the manner of, or the methodologies to deliver the subject matter, right? They should know performance standards, outcomes, and all of that. So I'm gonna throw you to the.
Sorry, Neil. There's actually a running joke among EdTech coaches around the world. And here's the thing: an EdTech coach will not fix your laptop. Instead, an EdTech coach will help you make your learning and teaching better. So that's what
I think that really clarifies things. Yeah. Exactly. So this person is not the person who's going to be. They're not going to be bench building your computer. Don't expect that person to be the EdTech coach for your school as well. But I'm going to throw you at the deep end, Jim, and I'm going to give you a real world example that I personally dealt with when I was part of a school, say 4 years ago. One of the learning areas, Filipino, had a mix of different teacher profiles. There were 3 fresh graduate, new teachers, graduate teachers who had 0 work experience. And there were 3 very seasoned, very experienced Filipino professors who moved out of the university, the college level of that institution, and taught in senior high school. So the more eager teachers were basically the younger lot who weren't considered the subject matter experts, and the less eager when it came to tech were the teachers or the professors who knew a lot about Filipino. Have you encountered an ed tech sort of implementation environment that's similar to that? And how do you negotiate these 2 potentially conflicting groups, subgroups in one learning area, and make sure that they all embrace tech, but at the same time, do not forget about performance standards and subject matter expertise and 21st century pedagogy, which you highlighted?
Yeah, if I got the question right, Here's the thing. The first challenge really for an EdTech coach is to work with teachers who might not want to use technology either because, and these are the usual things, and I'm not making fun of them, but here are the usual
Mhm.
things that I've heard. I can teach my class even at my state, even without technology. I've heard that. I've been teaching for 20 years. Why will I use technology? And I always to answer those questions, I always go back to the idea that, in the end, it's not really about you. It's also being about the student because in the end, um, for usually I would say the teacher, do you know your students who they are? Do you know the language they speak? Do you know the technology tools that they use? And I would, of course, in a nice manner, as an ethic coach, you could always say that. But in the end, I've always realized that when we want to talk to teachers who may be hesitant or maybe, negative about the use of technology, and most of the time they are actually some of our more expert content teachers. I always tell them that in the end, you owe it to your students because you have to teach considering their context. And I always present to them that part of their language is actually use of technology, of the devices that they have. It's part of who they are, right? And making them learn with technology is something that could actually help them. And in the end, you need to veer away to keep the discussion about the students, not about the teacher. Because if it's about the teacher, you might be at the losing end. Because in the end, the teacher will just say, "Well, I don't want to because I don't need to." Change the narrative, change the perspective into what if you put yourself in the position of your student. You're teaching Filipino, for example. I know that some teachers are actually making the students create memes, and I want to give a shout out to Rachel Santos. I've seen her do this. Some of the students in high school do not want to read Ibong Adarna, Florante at Laura, because it's boring, it's long. You know what the teacher said that did? Sorry, what the teacher did? Gave them a meme challenge to create a meme out of the Ibong Adarna story. And they had to read Ibong Adarna to create a very good meme. And that meme was created out of using an app in the iPad. And they did. And they did well with those. So number one, you have you got to let the students read Ibong Adarna or Folante at Laura, but at the same time they're enjoying it. Another thing, and I love this because I work with a Filipino teacher in grade 5, and they're doing book review. And then I asked the teacher, should the book review be text based? Should a book review something that they always need to write, or is it something that they can deliver orally? And it was so good because the teacher was a veteran teacher, and she was so open, and she said, actually, I'm just gonna listen to the content, not just on the writing. So we did an interactive book review, which means that they have to write something and they have to record themselves. And this Filipino teacher was like, oh, magic, because they have a text-based assessment. It's just one assessment, by the way, but one part uses text. The other one asks them to make personal reflection through video, orally also. So teacher has now two assessments in just one project. An oral conversation, which is assessment in Filipino, and the other one is the written assessment. So that's one way of how you do it. Most of the time when you work with teachers, especially those who might not be very accommodating of technology, but I don't know how they're surviving right now with the online learning. I hope I hope that they were more open now because they don't have a choice. But that's how you work with them. You engage them, like what I've said. You look at their strengths, you present to them the concerns that they have. And then in the end, if you're just starting to have an EdTech coach in your school, work with the teachers who want to work with you first. Work with teachers who want to work with you first, because in the end, you have to give that agency. Now, what about the new teachers who are so excited with? I don't really see a problem because in the end, what we did actually, and I want to credit this with my team also, is we partner a veteran teacher with a younger teacher, or maybe we don't even look at the age right now, because in coaching you don't look at the age. You look at how open they are into learning. So we partnered a teacher who is expert in the content. We partnered the teacher with a teacher who is more knowledgeable in technology. Why did we do that? Because we made them realize that despite the age or number of years that you're in the school, we want you to realize that that you actually can bring something on the table, that you can actually learn from each other. So I think number one big idea is, yes, we respect our veteran, our content experts, but that should not give them the reason not to be open and not to learn. Interestingly, I would even say those teachers should actually be models of openness and lifelong learning, right? Because in the end, when you ask those teachers, it actually boils down to a more personal reason rather than focusing on the student. It's actually a tricky situation. My answers are not perfect answers. They're not. I don't want to impose them also, but you need to read the people. You need to read the situation. Yeah.
Fantastic. No, I think just hearing your stories and your experience, and Xavier, and all your interactions, having been an EdTech coach for years, I think that's very valuable. We're gonna take up one more question, and then we're gonna pause, and we're gonna hear from our other resource. Von Steven asks, one of the newest criteria for promotion among teachers is proficiency in IT. So should the EdTech coach, if his or her school finally had one, should the EdTech coach take part in evaluating the IT competencies of teachers?
I say not. Because the first idea of EdTech coaching is making the process a safe space for mistakes. That's what I meant a while ago when personally I don't want EdTech coaching to be part of an evaluative process, because you lose that safe space. You're creating a safe space. For example, a veteran teacher who is an expert, you want that veteran teacher to use technology tool. And yet you tell her, but our EdTech coaching session will be part of the evaluative process. That veteran teacher will just simply say, no, I will not anymore coach with you, because if I commit something, a mistake, then you will be reporting that. I will not feel safe anymore. Why would I risk something that you would have to report to my superior? It sort of betrays the process in itself, right? So I think we can make the teacher more accountable by giving the teacher a target goal, right? But we need to see EdTech coaches as a support for the teacher to reach that goal. And then in the end, I think it's very important that this is where the external observer comes in. That observer, that administrator, that superior who is not part of the coaching process, so that that administrator or observer could also maintain a very objective perspective for the teacher. Because in the end, EdTech coaching could also be very personal, because that teachers will be sharing their fears to you. They'll be sharing their concerns to you, right? And for me, it sort of betrays that idea of having a safe space. Leave the performance appraisal to the superior, because that's their expertise. But make sure that you bring in EdTech coaches to support those teachers whom we have given the goal to improve themselves as teachers who can teach technology. In the end, you will have to triangulate the data. Most of the time, you have self rating or self reflection, right, of teachers. You triangulate that with your data as an administrator. You can also triangulate that with others.
Great. I agree with you 100%. I think that trust building is key. You talked about that a lot in the first half of your presentation, and just making sure that that's preserved. I think is important to make the coach and coachee relationship successful. We're going to take a pause on our questions. The questions are starting to flow in. We're going to try to accommodate them toward the end of our webinar. But throughout the last hour and a half, we've been using this online learning platform, ClassIn, which we will now be learning more about. So we're going to be inviting on screen the country manager for Philippines and Thailand of ClassIn, Mr. Yukon Lee. Yukon?
Thank you, Neil. Thank you for, oh, sorry. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your kind introduction. And hello, everyone. My name is Yukun. I'm currently the country manager for ClassIn in Philippines. It's my pleasure to be here. And I have to say, there is no way that I am ever going to top anything that Jim has shared just now. So I'm just going to make my speech very short and sweet, and I'll try to get straight to the point. So I did not prepare any PowerPoint slide with me today. So I'm just going to use the Blackboard to share what I have learned over the past year when working with stakeholders in the education industry. We're talking about specifically teachers, school principals, and EdTech coaches, just like Jim himself. Matter of fact, I do see Jim as one of my mentors, as I am relatively new to the education industry. And I think just over the past year and a half, with this huge change in the way that we're teaching, right, with this huge shift in the pedagogical paradigms, I think teachers, students, everybody is kind of thrown into this spiral where we must be quickly adapting to the new environments. And luckily, Jim was someone that worked in an environment where he and his colleagues were able to kind of foresee these type of changes taking place, so that they were able to kind of prepare themselves and position themselves in a better place where they were better prepared and able to deal with these changes. So definitely a lot of learning can come from people just like himself and many others who are working in similar situations. And everything that I'll be sharing today, I just wanted to make this very clear. Everything that I'll be sharing today is nothing new. I have simply just learned all of these by talking and speaking and working the day-to-day with all of our educators in the Philippines. So I have to say that I am simply the messenger for all of these messages. I hope that I will be able to do a great job in the next 10 to 15 minutes to really condense everything that I have learned so far with our attendees today, so that I will be able to kind of, summarize and pass on whatever I have learned to share with everyone here for your benefit. And I have added a little bit of, my own elements into everything that I have learned so far. And this is why we are going to be talking about co-piloting in online learning with educators. Now, just like what Jim has shared before with regards to how to be an EdTech coach and how to coach your, how to coach your teaching faculty, how to coach your colleagues, how to really kind of build that leadership spirit or that leadership feel without having an actual leader's position within your organization, I think is also really, really important from outside of the organization, from outside of the schools, where, me coming from an EdTech supplier's point of view, kind of co-piloting and working alongside these schools. I would like to share with you what I have learned and what I do think are some of the important pillars on how we can help teachers and students, how we can help schools to conduct really meaningful online experiences, especially during this time of pandemic. So just a couple of things that I would like to share. Number one, obviously, because we are now constrained within the space of our homes, we have to work remotely, we have to study and teach remotely with our students. Obviously, stable conferencing will become a very, very important aspect of all of this. Now, there's not so much that we will be able to do when it comes to building up the infrastructure, when it comes to having more stable internet connection, when it comes to building more bandwidth, because that's really an entirely separate conversation with the public sector, right? That's very much the higher up decision, not something that we can do. So I'll be sharing with you how we, coming from the private sector, what kind of efforts that we are making in order to make it kind of easy to access and light on the burden, right, for our users in this regard. The second part, really, I wanted to kind of help you focus on what is really important in online learning, right? Online learning, is this really so different compared to offline? Maybe from the very surface of everything, it does seem like it's very, very far off. It does seem like there's a learning gap. But really, why is that learning gap occurring? And why is it looking so differently compared to what we're used to before? Is it really the modality that's the thing? Or maybe is it because the change in the modality kind of changes our mindset and makes us and it kind of makes us deviate from really what is truly occurring during our learning process, right? Is it because we are so new to this online landscape that we kind of lose sight of all of the basic things that we're so used to in our professional training to becoming a teacher, right? The pedagogical approaches more or less should stay the same, but are we really able to incorporate that in our online learning setup? Maybe not so much. And why is that? Maybe is for a whole myriad of different reasons, right? Is it because we're unfamiliar with the tools? Is it because we are simply not used to not having our physical presence felt in the classroom? These could all be contributing factors in this whole mix that's kind of making the learning gap expand day by day. So I hope to share with you how we are able to then help you minimize that gap. And last but not least, I would like to share a little bit about how we are helping entire organizations to make the whole implementation process more easier and carefree. Because essentially, at the end of the day, we don't want to pile on even more stress to our teachers, to our IT coordinators, to our school partners, to our coaches, by giving them more difficulty or more barrier to entry when they are trying to familiarize themselves with a brand new setup, with a brand new classroom setting. So we want to make it super simple, and I'll be sharing with you how we are able to do that. So these are the couple of points that I'll be delivering today. And to be honest, if you have heard up to this point so far, I'm pretty sure you will be able to grasp the entire thing that I'll be sharing with you later on. So this is point number one, is about stable internet conferencing. How do we actually make sure that we can set up a stable conference with our students? Is so key, so important, because this is really the gatekeeper when it comes to online synchronous learning, right? As we all know, when we have low bandwidth, when we have a laggy experience with our students, well, our teachers are very lucky because we are fortunate enough to still be able to work on campus. So most of the time we are enjoying the stable connection in our school campuses, no problem. However, when it comes to our students, we really have no idea where they're located. So that could be all out of whack, all in a sudden, right? Very quickly. We live in this huge archipelago, and sometimes weather conditions can just influence the way that we are connected very, very easily, right? A storm can take out, actually, matter of fact, there is a rain that's ongoing from last night till this morning. So we had conversations earlier prior to this session about whether we should reschedule this session, right? So all of these things really play into very practical matters, right? These are the baseline factors that we need to consider before we go in to any online synchronous learning sessions. So obviously, like I mentioned, we'll not be able to build more cell phone towers, but what we are able to do as private sector solution providers is that we're trying to optimize our products so that we can make sure the stress on the teachers and students are minimized to the maximum extent, right? We want to make sure that it's easier for us to have maybe a lower bandwidth requirement compared to other video conferencing products. We want to make sure that we have a more economical, running cost-friendly type of setup so that we can make sure that actually our students are able to attend all of our online sessions, even towards the end of the month when their data plans are running out, right? So these are things that we definitely want to take into consideration of. And this is what we're doing. We're helping everybody to lower their bandwidth requirement down to 2 megabytes per second in order for us to have this online classroom together. And for those of you who are watching inside the classroom today, you can notice that your data package didn't shrink too much. Actually, we're 2 hours into the session already, and you're probably just costing somewhere around 300 megabytes of data so far. So that's what we're doing here to make sure that the data cost is becoming less and less, so that it's easy on the pockets for our teachers and students. And going into the second portion of my presentation today, I wanted to talk about, going back to the basics, really taking online lessons back to what we are used to in the offline settings, right? I wanted to make sure that we are all on the same page here, where we need to really understand, just like what Jim mentioned earlier, always, right? 21st century pedagogical approaches before technology, because it really is a two-way street when it comes to teaching and learning remotely. Online learning modality shouldn't be the start of a new era. It really should be just a seamless transition to a better era. That's how we see it here at Klassen. We believe that, in order to have all of these tech-enhanced learning experiences to happen, we cannot force our teachers to suddenly all change their pedagogical approaches, because that's simply not possible, right? And it's also not logical, because the way that we teach had been kind of fixated on this classroom setting for so many years, decades, if not centuries, right? The reason why we didn't change it is because it works. If it doesn't work, we would have changed it already. We wouldn't be sitting in classrooms with our students anymore. We would probably doing something else. So since this is working, why fix something if it's not broken, right? We need to make sure that we're not just changing the user habits. We need to make sure that we're not just, moving all of a sudden from a classroom to a kind of like an online meeting type of deal, but we really need to preserve that classroom element of how everything is being run. And when we are not having this when we're not having this physical presence inside the online classroom, where we cannot essentially walk around the classroom and show our students, hey, I know what you're doing. Make sure you pay attention to what I'm saying and try not to do anything else. Try not to get distracted. When we lose this physical presence, it becomes very, very difficult for us to use this kind of coercion to keep our students around, to keep them away from the distraction, these Facebook platforms, all these social media things, Facebook, Netflix, YouTube, Twitter, whatever, all these platforms that are designed to make people addicted to them, right? So instead of using coercion, maybe we should, in contrast, use more attraction, right? How do we actively, or proactively, I should say, attract our students to stay inside the classroom, to engage them better, instead of just saying, oh, no, don't do this, don't do that, stop this, stop that, because you're not going to stop them. Trust me, there's no way for you to stop them. And just like there's no way for me to stop you from switching out from this window to go to another social media platform and chat with your friends, there's also no way for you to stop your students from leaving the conference room and going somewhere else to browse Netflix or watch YouTube videos, right? So how do we make sure we keep them around? We make sure we keep them around by having more interaction, by really flipping the classroom and put the driver's stick in their hands so that they can actually feel like they are a contributing part of this class, and they're genuinely contributing to the learning process of not only themselves, not only the teachers, but also their peers. They feel like they're an important part of the online classroom, right? They feel like they're an important part of this online learning family. So what we have thought about doing is that we want to make sure when it comes to learning, content is number one. Content is the baseline, because we have to make sure our teachers have stuff to teach, right? And all of these learning platforms across everywhere have all different formats of content that kind of made it readily available for our teachers to use. But none of them really help our teachers to put it really inside the classroom and allow the students and the teachers to work collaboratively on it together, right? So how do we do that? What we have done so is that we have built this cloud drive where we actually support all of these different file types that you're using on a day-to-day basis, right? Your PowerPoint slides, your Word documents, Excel sheets, PDF files, EPUBs for all of your textbooks, as well as videos and audio files, so that you will be able to actually share it inside the classroom. Just like what we have been doing this morning, right? Where we're able to have this presentation slide over here. And matter of fact, all of our students, all of our teachers and students will be able to draw and write on this collaboratively. If I choose to give you the authorization to do so, then you will be able to do that, right? So this is something that we are able to create in this environment, so that we make our students feel like they're actually part of the lesson, they're part of the class, they're not really lagging behind. Another thing is that we need to make sure their attention span is not compromised, right? Just like everyone right now, we are 2 hours into the session, and probably the attention is slowly starting to wane, right? So how do we make sure that everybody is in the classroom right now? How can I, as a teacher, know for a fact that all of you guys rotating on top of this camera row are actually listening to me and not going somewhere else and doing something else, right? This is very, very important. And this is when we need to make sure we create all kinds of engaging learning scenarios to keep our students engaged. And a very simple thing I would like to do here with everyone today is that I would like to actually utilize a small answering device. So we are going to do a quick polling here. Now, this is a very silly question that I'm doing, but I hope that everybody can participate. Okay, so any volunteers here? Anyone want to volunteer for this activity? If you would like to, you can choose to raise your hand at the bottom right corner of this screen. So if you click on raising your hand, then we will be able to see you there. Yes, perfect. Thank you guys. Okay, alrighty. So what I'm gonna ask you guys to do is I want to work on this little question with you guys together. Okay, so this is a very simple question, sample question that we have designed. Okay, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? And I would like you to give me your choices. Okay, I would like you to give me your answers, A, B, C, or D. And we are gonna do this question in, say, it's a very simple question, right? So we're gonna keep it short. Let's do it in 1 minute, shall we? So guys, you now have an answering device in front of you, and just make sure you pick whatever choice you have, right? Whatever choice you have, you would like to send in, just go for that. A is vanilla, B is chocolate, C is pistachio, and D is rocky road. Let's do a quick polling session here, right? For those of you who are inside the classroom, send in your answer by choosing a particular choice on that answering device, and choose send in or submit, and we will be able to see your answer straight away. Yeah, so for those of you who are actually watching on the webpage broadcast, you should be able to see that while my students are answering these questions, as a teacher, I already see the live statistics, right? So all of these things are really, really important, because this is a good activity designed to help our teachers really understand where our students are, how our students are actually comprehending the information that we are teaching inside the classroom, right? So now the timer has run out. So we're going to end the answering, and we can all see the statistics shown right in front of us. And we got a winner, and the winner is obviously the classic chocolate. Okay, so congratulations for those of you team chocolate. Yeah, you have won the majority. So you can see here, this is actually a very, very important thing, because these types of activities really, really help our teachers to keep track of our students' learning progress. So I highly recommend all of our teachers to really implement these type of activities. Number one, as a way to kind of warn your students, to keep them engaged, to make sure they're sharp, they're staying focused, to listen to whatever information you are sharing with them. Also, secondly, is a good evaluation tool, not just for the students, but also for yourself, right? And what I mean by that is, whenever you're designing these activities, you can judge by the answering rate, you can judge by the accuracy rate to decide, how are my students comprehending the information? Is it really a successful delivery that I'm hosting today? And another thing is that you will really be able to see from the stats how you are performing as an educator, right? How is everything going? Just like what Jim has mentioned at the beginning of the presentation of his, he was doing a Mentimeter exercise, and nobody answered, right? What could that be? What possible reason could that be? Is it really because Jim is not doing his job as a teacher? I don't think so. Maybe it's because we are not so fast to change to a different page to get the link to then join the Mentimeter or scan the QR code or whatever, right? It could be because it's Saturday morning and we just want to lay back and we don't want to do much, right? That could also be another reason. So this is all of these factors needs to come into play. And I guess what our teachers really need is to have the accurate information presented in front of them so that they can really have a correct judgment or at least a close to accurate judgment about how their online classes are doing. And this could also be tied into the whole coaching process, right? Because all of these activities can not only be seen by the teacher inside the classroom, but also the teaching assistant, which is the role that I'm undertaking today. So usually what tends to happen in our partner schools is that whenever they're pairing up with a mentor-mentee kind of arrangement, they typically have a teaching assistant kind of laying low in the background with a slightly technologically challenged teacher who are new to these texts, so that the teaching assistant, the coach, can really just help to check what are the progresses. And I think these are some of the things that I have learned from Jim also, where he has shared with me some of the best practices that they are taking place in Xavier. So I would just like I said again, I'm the messenger today, so I'm just taking words out of what I have heard and putting it out here to share with everybody. So I hope that this could be something that we are all getting from these past conversations that I was so fortunate to have. So last but not least, I just wanted to say that there are infinite number of choices of different kinds of interactions that we can set up with our students so that we can benefit them to the maximum capacity, to encourage them to really perform this learning journey, right? Stay on course in this learning journey with us. And also just instant feedback tools, not just to ourselves but also to them, so that we know that we are all on the same page, so that we don't feel like we're so disconnected with our students, because in fact we are not. We just need to make sure we know how to utilize the tools. And yes, it is a long process sometimes for us to really best grasp the philosophy behind different arrangements, different technology tools, why they are designed in a certain way, why they're designed so and so. So I think it's so important. Like I said, it's a two-way process. It's important for our educators to really be open-minded and try to explore different solutions that we have available to us, so that we can best maximize whatever benefit that they can certainly bring about. And I think another way, which is something I should say, I have realized and I have really started to believe in, is that technology providers, EdTech solution providers, should really try to think in the educator's shoes. And whenever we are trying to train somebody to use tech, or whenever we are trying to coach somebody through the whole tech implementation process, tech providers should not stay in the little tech box that they are so used to living in. Whereas we really should come out and learn the language of education and talk to educators with the language of education, so that we can understand each other, so that we're on the same frequency, so that we can have this communication channel open, and we'll be able to better create more engaging, more effective online delivery for our students, so that they are not being left behind, right? Because even though the pandemic kind of put a pause in the world, really time did not pause, and we are still moving forward. Our kids are still growing up, and we should not really take this kind of pause in our society as an excuse to say, okay, maybe I don't need to take that much care for my students because it's difficult. Rather, we should work even harder in a tight collaboration partnership between organizations, so that we can still ensure, I would say, not so subpar, right, development path for our students. Maybe even creating something that's surprisingly well, right, surprisingly functional for our students, to really make sure that they are well prepared for the road ahead of them, right? So I would like to cut my presentation short here because I don't want to, I think we're already over time, and I want to leave more time for the Q&A session because we have many questions coming in from all different channels. So I would like to keep that road open. I just wanted to, last but not least, talk about how we are able to help different schools implement this solution in a very, very fast manner. So what we are able to deliver at Klassen is that we are able to deliver a seamless integration with different LMS platforms. So I think most of our attendees who are listening in today are fortunate enough to have some level of an EdTech infrastructure, IT infrastructure within your schools, within your organizations. So that in itself is terrific. I think you're already in a very good position to prepare yourself for the next school year, right? Because last school year is really the scramble where we were sourcing for different things. Whereas this year, I think the focus should really be on quality, should really be on how we are able to deliver better and maximize what's available to have the quality come up again. So what we're doing now is that we're not trying to change the user behavior of our partner organizations. Rather, we want to help them enhance their teaching quality in a much easier manner, right? Any LMS you are currently using, including Canvas, Moodle, Brightspace by D2L, whatever other that's available right now, we can provide this LTI integration protocol that can literally be done within a day, so that you can already keep using your existing LMS while having these kind of interactive online sessions via this classroom, where you can actually genuinely work and interact with your students in a much more collaborative manner. So I would highly encourage every single attending organization to consider this and maybe give it a shot if you are interested in it. Okay. So again, thank you so much. Thank you very much to everyone that are attending our session today. This will conclude my presentation. So I really appreciate your attention, and I hope my sharing was of some value to you guys. Again, I am the messenger, and I hope I have done my job well. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim, for being for sharing with us all of your experience, all of your learning and insights in this. And thank you, Neil, for moderating our session today. So I'll turn back the floor to Jim and Neil to wrap up our discussion for the remainder of this webinar. I believe we have tons of questions flooding in right now. So I hope that Neil is here.
I'm right here.
Okay.
Thanks. And Yukon, just picking up on what you presented, if any of the school administrators and school heads who are with us today were curious to find out more about Klassen, how do they reach out?
Thank you, Neil. So actually, my colleagues are already working on the live chats in different channels that we're broadcasting in. So they will be sending in information about how our educators will be able to get in touch with us in those chat channels. So I don't want to plug too much already into this, but for anyone who are interested in, I'm pretty sure you will be able to find the information in the chat. So thank you so much. They can just send me an email, and that will be good enough.
Great. Thanks, Yukon. Well, a lot of stuff we covered today. I think we just want to make time for maybe one or two more questions. If Jim could accommodate us some more, and we could keep him a little bit more. So one of the things that one of the recurring themes among questions really is sort of the non-teachable teacher profile, or someone who's resistant to change. So I'll just combine sort of all of these questions into one. I think Marky said it well. How can we convince our co-teachers to be more open to new changes or to changes, especially in using tech when teaching? Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Yeah, I always, like what I've said a while ago, convincing the teachers will be a little bit easier if you turn the conversation on what is fair for the students. Remember what I mentioned a while ago. The conversation should always be about what will help what will help the teacher or the student be better, or learn better in the classroom, whether it's virtual or physical. But of course, um, because this is a very difficult situation, some teachers will have their own reasons. So if opportunity allows it, it's also good to further ask the teacher why they don't want to use technology. I'm just very, very interested with the question right now, because your school has transitioned to online distance learning right now, even if the teacher does not want to use technology, that teacher has no choice, because because you're using online distance learning as a modality this school year. So
Exactly.
I think, Neil, our experience at this time of the pandemic should have taught us something about the use of technology. That most of the time, maybe it's really a personal preference for the teacher. But interestingly, here's the thing: DepEd has already added in the Philippine Professional Standards for Teachers the criteria for the use of technology, right? A positive use of technology in the classroom. If you have a teacher who does not want to use technology, we need to be transparent to the teacher and tell them that this is the standards and you did not use technology throughout the school year, then we cannot give you a high standard for this. Because if the Philippine education system right now expects that a good teacher actually knows how to use technology, then we are very sorry to tell the teacher who does not want to use technology that he's missing something that would make a teacher a good teacher. Some will contest me and say, so just because we don't use technology, does that mean that we're not good teachers? You could interpret it that way, but again, the conversation really is more of the students. Quote and unquote, you might not be teaching to your potential, or you might not be leading, empowering the students to achieve better because you missed something. So, parang assessment, it's like assessment only. You have the rubrics, you cannot give a student a perfect A plus score if he misses one of the standards in the rubrics. It's the same thing, because if the Philippine Professional Standards for Teacher says that or the basic, it's not even it's a basic expectation, right? So I think it's very important that the conversation should be anchored on what will make the students learn better and be better. Remove yourself from the conversation that will only boil down to personal preference, because I think if that's the conversation, then we're at the losing end, like what I've said a while ago, because it's personal preference. But if you have objective standards, right? Like the professional standard or Philippine professional standards for teachers, or maybe even your school's performance appraisal instrument that says you can only get a high rating as a teacher if you know how to use technology. And let's be fair. Let's be fair, right? Let's be fair on for those teachers who do not want and for those teachers who are very open. Sorry, that's my
Great.
admin. I wore my admin hat on that perspective because I'm also a school administrator. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us will tend to focus, and rightly so, on our own definitions of teaching. And sometimes we don't think so much about whether there is learning. And I think it's very important to think about both, equally. But at the end of the day, it's learning that's more important. Um, I want to ask you this last question. I'm sort of consolidating some of the questions from the group. What should they be doing then after this webinar? If I'm a school administrator, a school head who's attending or listening in to you right now, or I am a very eager, proactive faculty member, not a leader by any means, but I want to be an EdTech coach. For those two profiles of the audience, what should their next step be?
Neil, I love your question because I don't think I spend much time on that part. And my call to action really is just like what I've said a while ago. For school leaders, I invite you that you look into how you provide professional development for your teachers. that you don't just settle for one-off training, sporadic trainings. Most of our trainings are just basically at this season or in this season where we're having in-service training. Having EdTech coaches will actually provide a venue for more contextualized professional development for teachers. Remember that coaching in itself is a professional development. It's a more contextualized, more targeted method or form for helping teachers be better. So for school leaders out there, for administrators, my invitation is to try to establish a coaching program in your school, right? The next question would be, where do I source out EdTech coaches? I would recommend that I don't know, depending on what you want to do, will it be an open invitation for those teachers or for those who are already good in doing what they do in the classroom to take part in EdTech coaching professional development? You need to prepare the EdTech coaches, most especially not just in learning the tech, but actually with connecting with teachers. I think that's the make or break deal for EdTech coaches. It's their ability to connect with the teachers, right? It's their ability to really not sell, not really sell, but to empathize. It's to be one with the teachers. That's, I think, the next challenge there. Now, if you're a teacher, and like what Neil's mentioned, you're so enthusiastic, you want to do this. You could undergo a professional development for coaches by yourself. Treat it like a professional development for you, or you could do informal training. But if you already have what it takes to become EdTech coaches, if you have the courage, step up, right? Step up and present yourself. But I know, knowing that in the Philippine culture we have the crab mentality thing, or quote and unquote pabida, like you just wanna do that because you want to elevate yourself from the others. I think I wanna challenge those who want to become EdTech coaches, what it really means for them. Because if you take this as a way to elevate yourself, separate yourself from the others, I don't think you would be a very good EdTech coach. I don't think people would come to you and ask for your help, right? So I think being an EdTech coach, if you want to be an EdTech coach, look at this as a way to serve the community, as a way to collaborate. Remember, EdTech coaching is collaborating. It's being one with the teachers. You can be a teacher still having your classroom or your virtual classes, having your own responsibilities. It may be an additional responsibility for you. But then again, look at your intentions also, because EdTech coaching could be personal. EdTech coaching they look at you also, and they can see through you, look at your credibility. So if you've noticed, it's very challenging to be an EdTech coach, but it's also very fulfilling to see teachers doing well, to journey with them. So yeah, that's my call to action for school leaders. Again, establish a coaching program in your school. And then in the end, and if you're a teacher or maybe someone who's very enthusiastic, why not be an EdTech coach yourself also? And then the bigger goal, call to action, Neil, like what I've said, is to establish a culture of coaching, so that even if the former EdTech coaches leave the school or even the principal retires, that culture is actually has permeated, or the coaching culture has already permeated all the aspects of the school culture, and it's not anymore dependent on individuals. It's already part of who or what the school is. There. Thanks, Neil.
Fantastic. I think that's really clear calls to action. I hope that all the participants have picked up on that. Really appreciate your generosity, the generosity of your time and your expertise today, Jim and Yukon. On behalf of Paku, Kokopia, SIAP, basically the forces behind this webinar series, I want to thank both of you for spending your Saturday with us. And on behalf of the Executive Director of PACU, Ms. Joyce Samaniego, I want to thank all the 1,400 participants who joined our wonderful webinar this morning. We hope that you picked up, all these valuable stories and experiences care of Jim, and hopefully you can get started on introducing an EdTech coaching environment within your schools. If you had some questions that we weren't able to answer, we'll try to post those questions and their corresponding answers on the PACU web page, especially right under our live stream. Hopefully you have the time to address all of them. But thank you so much for participating in our webinar this morning, and we hope to see you in the subsequent ones. You enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Have a good weekend.